Saw that was running late.
We're not there yet.
Oh, wait, are we live or are we going live now? I'm live. All right, wonderful. It is 5:05 p.m. Let's go ahead and call the May 3rd Quality of Life Committee meeting to order. If I could please get a roll call, Ms. Martin.
Counselor Chavez,
Here.
Counselor Lee Garcia,
Here.
Counselor Michael Garcia,
Present.
Counselor Villarreal,
Present.
Chair Cassett.
Here.
You have a quorum, Madam Chair.
Thank you so much. Moving on to approval of the agenda, we will have a change. We are going to go ahead and move presentations to after we do the consent, because our presenter is running just a little bit behind, so we'll give him some extra time. So if I could please get are there any other changes to the agenda?
Madam Chair, no changes to the agenda.
And if there are not any other changes, if I can get a motion to approve as amended. Approve as amended.
Second.
Motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. And moving on to approval of the consent agenda, I just have item D pulled by Counselor Michael Garcia. Are there any other items that anyone would like to? Counselor Lee Garcia. I apologize. Counselor Garcia, Lee. I mixed up my Garcias. So sorry about that. Yeah, no, sorry, Counselor. And okay, so Counselor Lee Garcia has pulled item D. Are there any other items that individuals or members of the committee would like to pull at this time? Although we will not have staff. And if not, can I get a motion to approve as amended? Approve as amended. Motion and a second. If I could please get a roll call, Ms. Martin.
Counselor Chavez,
Yes.
Counselor Lee Garcia,
Yes.
Counselor Michael Garcia,
Yes.
Counselor Villarreal,
Yes.
Chair Cassett.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Thank you so much. So moving on to item D from consent, it's consideration of a resolution sponsored by Counselor Chavez and Counselor Rivera. It's a resolution establishing a 2-year pilot program to support the physical and mental well-being of employees. We have Bernadette Salazar, our Human Resources Director, here to present and answer questions. Counselor Lee Garcia, you pulled this. Would you like a presentation first, or do you want to just jump into questions at this time?
Sure, a quick presentation would be nice. Thank you.
Director Salazar, the floor is yours.
Madam Chair, members of the committee, this resolution is being introduced by Counselor Chavez and Counselor Rivera, establishing a 2-year pilot program to support physical and mental well-being for all city employees. This resolution recognizes the importance of physical and mental wellness. It would provide for 1 day of wellness leave and up to 2 hours per week for physical and mental fitness leave for all city employees. And I would like to turn it over to Counselor Chavez to let her talk about this great program a little bit more.
Thank you so much. Mental health has been something that's very important to me. I think all of my colleagues know that. And I feel like our city staff are on the front lines of the work. You know, leadership definitely comes up with wonderful ideas and legislation to improve Santa Fe, but the people doing the work in Santa Fe are our city employees. And we have had some very heavy years. I think overall, in general, our community is healing from a lot of different things, and things have not become easier. And I think an organization is just as successful as their employees are healthy in mind, body, and spirit. And I think it's our job to create initiatives that take care of them. Really what piqued my interest is the state is doing something similar in regards to the 2 hours a week in wellness or fitness leave. They've had really a lot of success in it with retention and recruitment. It's something that has drawn state employees. I think if you look for anyone looking for a job, there's always a state employee mentioning this program. And then just wellness leave. I think it's okay to tell our employees it's okay to not be okay. And we're going to support you in that and make sure that you have time to heal as needed. So that when you do come back, you're ready and in a good place to make Santa Fe as wonderful as we want it to be and see it to be in the future. So really just starting with those on the front line of doing the work in Santa Fe, making sure we take care of them.
Thank you so much, Counselor. And Counselor Lee Garcia, the floor is yours. And thank you, Director Salazar.
Thank you. Thank you both for being here and answering actually a few questions. I see how important this could be for many people, especially ones who struggle or those that are dealing with very high stress, strenuous situations. We can all use a little bit of time off at times to step away and take a breather. First question I have on this, and you know, I'm in supportive of this, but I just kind of wanted some clarifications. This would be one day of wellness. Is it per year? Is it per
Yes.
calendar year?
Madam Chair, Counselor Lee Garcia, it would be every calendar year, yes.
And it's 2 hours, or 2 hours, up to a full day's worth of time.
Madam
Is it 2
Chair,
hours per week?
Counselor Lee Garcia, so there's two components to the resolution, and the first one being 1 day of work. So it could be, it's equivalent to whatever an employee's work schedule is. So for a firefighter who works the 24-hour shift schedule, that workday would be 24 hours. And for an 8-hour employee, it would be 8 hours. And that would be comparable to the personal leave day. So it would be annually. And then the 2 hours for fitness and mental wellness would be up to 2 hours per week for employees. And that program is the one that's comparable to the state of New Mexico.
Thank you. So this is in addition to any personal leave that people already have or sick leave that people already have, in a sense.
Madam Chair, Counselor Lee Garcia, yes, that's correct.
That would, I would assume, only go towards regular time, not overtime. I think it's just regular time pay.
Madam Chair, Counselor Lee Garcia, yes, that was built in the on the exhibit. That is the language comparable to the state of New Mexico.
Thank you. One other question I would have in regards to this is how, and this is across the board, I'm assuming it's not only for police and fire, it's for all city employees.
Madam Chair, Counselor Lee Garcia, yes, that's correct for all employees.
Do we feel that at all that this would be, given our, I guess, situation where departments are somewhat understaffed, how it would affect having fully staffed departments, I guess? Our quality of service, and what I'm getting at is that do we feel, and this isn't a whole lot of time, but they already have personal time, they already have sick time. This is an addition, and now you're giving extra time to people for our departments who are already somewhat understaffed. Does that seem like it would be somewhat of a stress on them?
Madam Chair, Counselor Lee Garcia, I think that's a really good question. And I believe in Exhibit A, it's again comparable to the language that the state uses, that we don't want to jeopardize any city services. So the leave could potentially be denied the 2 hours per week if operational needs, if an employee is needed to be there, then, it could be denied. But the language in Exhibit A does state that it would not have a negative impact on city operations. And also in the packet, there could be some potential gains where people have a little bit more clarity. They're able to have a little more time to be more productive at work because they're taking care of themselves, both physically and mentally. So being that this is a pilot program, we'll be able to assess that by communicating with employees through surveys, providing numbers and statistics on who's taking advantage of the leave. And we can provide those updates periodically as you deem appropriate.
Thank you. And one last question. So as it being a pilot program, if it were to continue after the 2 years, does it come back to this governing body or for us for approval for a, I guess, in perpetuity or until?
Madam Chair, Counselor Lee Garcia, yes, the intent would be that we would evaluate it and then in 2 years determine if we're going to make it part of our HR rules and regulations, and then it would come back before the governing body.
Thank you. Those are all the questions I have. There's no other questions. So
Thank you so much,
Well, the-
Counselor. Any other questions or comments? Counselor Michael Garcia?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Director Salazar, for being here. I got just a quick question clarification. In the FIR, in the narrative portion, it said this would have cost the city approximately $3.75 million. But when you look at the table breakdown, there's nothing in there. So is there a reason why we haven't accounted for the money in the breakdown columns that would show if this was implemented for this year and then next year? I'm assuming because it's a 2-year pilot, that would cost that $3.75 million.
Madam Chair, Counselor Michael Garcia, thank you for that question. So the cost amount, I believe, was documented on the fiscal implication, and that's why there wasn't a breakdown. And the reason for that is because technically the hours are already budgeted. So this isn't something where we're coming and saying we need another 3 million or 1 million to fund this, because the hours are technically budgeted. It's a different code and it would be a leave code, but technically the hours are budgeted.
Okay. And thank you for clarifying that. I guess this is where the confusion around FIRs kind of we've back and forth, because it still is considered time, right? We're still paying the employee for those 2 hours. So it's still coming at a cost to the city, even though it's been budgeted. So I think for full transparency, we should show that it is still at some sense coming at a cost, because it's not like these employees are clocking out for those 2 hours. They're still being paid by the city. So it's coming at a cost of roughly 3.75 mil per year for the program, right? And so I'm wondering how we can demonstrate that, because in other positions that I've held, for example, when we give employees comp time, it still costs the entity resources because they're earning the paycheck, even though the work isn't getting done. So I think that's how we've always, or at least when I've done budgeting, we've always said it's still coming at a cost and we've got to demonstrate that cost. So I'd like to, I don't know who would respond to the question, because I think from my understanding is if we weren't going to be paying them for those 2 hours, then yes, it's not coming at a cost. But because it is, and even though it's been budgeted, fine, it's not an above and beyond cost, but it's still a cost. And so I'm wondering, should it still be reflective in the FIR? Because again, to look at other examples where there's been legislation in front of us where staff is not going above and beyond their daily work, but it's still reflective in the FIR because that's the cost it's costing the city for that employee. And so I apologize, Ms. Salazar. I don't know who would answer this question, because I think that's the clarification. And Rich, we always have this back and forth, right? How it's a cost to the city, and how do we demonstrate that it is still costing the city money to implement such a program or any other proposal in front of us where you're proposing to use staff time, even though it's not a quote unquote above and beyond, so to speak. You're not hiring new employees. So
Madam Chair, Counselor Michael Garcia, I think that's a really good question. And so we were when I was providing the information for the FIR, I thought the best thing to do is probably provide the most expensive scenario. So the 3.7 million is a calculation for that point in time of every single city employee, and what their rate of pay is times 2 hours for 52 weeks. And so likely not every single employee is going to have that, but I do believe that it was important for you all to see that number. And that's why we did put it on the fiscal implication on the FIR. But I think that you raise a good question. And so we did that at the highest level, the most conservative, if everybody took advantage of that. One thing that I could suggest is that we can look at it as a pilot program, and we do periodic reviews, and we can give data and statistics on how many people and how much those hours are actually costing. That might be helpful, but that would be one suggestion I would offer.
Sure. And I think it gets back to we need absolute guidance for staff on how to complete the FIRs. By no means am I think it's at your fault, Director Salazar, or anybody. I think we just need clear-cut guidance on how to reflect staff time at an FIR. I guess the only last question is, and I know we can't update it now because the budget hasn't passed, but there is that implication should the budget pass, the proposed budget, just going off these quick numbers and saying everybody got the 1% raise, that would bump this up to over $4 million because it's 1% of 3.75 million is another $300,000 at minimum, right? And so that's where we would, or is it? Yeah. Is it 300? I'm trying to do quick math, but 30,000, sorry. But so it'd be, it's so ultimately the number still would raise should the budget go up. And I don't think it's possible to reflect that in these numbers, given it's a proposal. Proposal won't be potentially approved until May 10th. This is going to be before us that same night, correct?
Yes, I believe so.
Okay. Just, making sure the numbers are as accurate as possible. I think those are the only questions I have. Thank you, Director Salazar. I do think this is a great proposal, given, today's day and age. The mental health of employees is critically important. I see it every day in my daily work life outside of council, where it's stress for folks to take time. And I think pre-pandemic, it was one of those, and I was extremely guilty of it as well, where never took time off. You worked more than your 40 hours. And, that we've kind of post-pandemic got back to that lifestyle where it's not healthy for folks, because that somehow that stress needs to be relieved, and folks relieve it in many different manners. And I think this is the best way to do it in a healthy manner versus taking it home and who knows what happens. But I think, thank you for the co-sponsor Chavez and co-sponsor Rivera for bringing this forward. I think ensuring that we've got a productive and healthy and having a workforce that feels that they're being supported is critical, especially in a time like this where, we're seeing staff depart our city as a workforce because of many different reasons. And if we can find reasons to keep them and bring them back, all the better. But no other questions. Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Director Salazar.
Thank you so much, Councilor Garcia. I have Councilor Chavez has a question. Councilor Lee Garcia has a question, follow-up. But before that, and I'm saying this mostly because I want your brains to remember this and not just mine, but this question about the FIR has come up numerous times. And I think that we maybe just need to adjust the FIR document to really just have a line that says, that calculates what this means for staff hours and what that means for cost, because we've had that challenge. So just something for the other members of the committee to think about in case I
forget to think about this and send it over to legislative services. Counselor. Okay, we will go to Counselor Lee Garcia next and then to Counselor Villarreal and then Chavez. Okay, there we go. All right, got the order. Counselor Lee Garcia, go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just one clarification. I didn't know if I missed it. It's use it or lose it. So if you don't use it for a calendar, it doesn't carry over.
Madam Chair, Counselor Lee Garcia, yes, you're correct.
And obviously it's equally distributed, available to every single employee, so there's no discrimination. And I think that was the last question that I have. So use it or lose it, and it doesn't carry on, so it's not like you can cash it out at the end of the calendar year.
Yes, that's correct.
Thank you. That's all I have.
Thank you, Counselor. Councilwoman Villarreal.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm supportive of this legislation. I think it's important to have these options for employees. So I'm happy to see this being proposed. I was just curious about the fiscal wording. It says every employee, if every employee utilized the wellness day leave, the equivalent cost would be 300,000. However, the total number of hours of work hours are already budgeted for the entire year to include an additional day of leave. Sorry, so tired. Does that mean that you all budgeted it for our current budget process to include this one additional day? What did you mean by the additional day of leave?
Madam Chair, Counselor Villarreal, I think the intent of that language is that for regular employees, we calculate at 2,080 hours a year.
Mhm.
And so we're not asking for 2,088. It's already built into that. It would just be considered time off. So we're not asking for an additional 8 hours. It's an additional day within the 2080 work schedule for the year. It would just be considered leave rather than time worked.
Got it. And it would be coded, you all would figure out the coding for that, wouldn't be like a sick leave day, or it's its own unique.
Madam Chair, Counselor Villarreal, that's a really good question for logistical purposes and in order to provide statistics for you all to review. I think creating its own code is important so we can track it and look at it from that point of view. So it would have its own code.
Got it. Thank you. Thanks for that clarification. I think that's it. I was just trying to figure out, I don't know why I can't wrap my brain. It's a regular day, but it's going to be coded differently. What did you say?
I said the way that helped me think about it is the cost is encumbered already because it's the cost for the employee. It's just that would be paid out while they're not present.
Got it. Okay. That helps me. I don't know why I couldn't sink my brain around that. The other thing is for the weekly, the 2 hours a week, physical and mental fitness leave. That's separate from, say, somebody, like if they take a lunch, they take a lunch, but if they decide to go do a workout class, they can do that on that same day, right? It's just folded into the workday.
Madam Chair, Counselor Villarreal, yes, that's correct.
Okay. I think that's it. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Councilwoman. Counselor Chavez.
Thank you. I just wanted to thank Director Salazar. She's been wonderful in this process, well, the entire team. And I want to thank everyone for the questions. One of the things I forgot to emphasize, which is like what I proposed to the team as being the most important, is I think it's crucial that government agencies and organizations emphasize the importance of mental health. I think we still have significant stigma around mental illness and those that are struggling, and that's why we have so many struggling silently. And for our youth, especially, who I will say are struggling. What we're seeing with our youth population is scary and sad, but for them to grow up in a city where their government is an example of saying, like I said, it's okay to not be okay, I think is very powerful. So I just wanted to emphasize the importance with that. And one of the reasons why I felt like this was a very important move for the city of Santa Fe. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Counselor Chavez. Counselor Michael Garcia, another question.
Sorry, Madam Chair. One last question, Director Salazar. Staff is paid out on personal leave should they choose to depart the city. Are they paid out on sick leave as well?
Madam Chair, Counselor Michael Garcia, personal holidays are not paid out and sick leave is also not paid out.
Okay. And the only reason I ask is because this could potentially be seen as, well, I typically take a mental health day using personal leave or sick leave. Now is this new option where that if those were paid out, it could be an additional cost to the city. So thank you for clarifying that. I really appreciate that, Director Salazar. No other questions, Madam Chair.
Thank you so much, Counselor. I really do want to thank Counselor Chavez and Counselor Rivera for bringing this forward and looking at how we explore better work-life balance and providing that to our employees. And also, I think so much of this speaks to the importance of finding ways that we can invest in our staff and that they are going to be able to better serve the community. Everybody that works for the city of Santa Fe is, of course, a public servant if they're taking care of themselves and really that idea of, put your own oxygen mask on first. And so I'm really grateful that you all brought this forward, and to you, Director Salazar, for being willing to look at this and work it out. And I'm sure after a couple of years, we'll be able to see what worked and what didn't. So I'm really looking forward to seeing how this does move forward. I had just a couple questions. One is when we're looking at how staff or how departments balance staff taking time off, if there is a common time that people are requesting, say they're requesting around the lunch hour or Friday afternoons or, something along those lines, how will that be determined as to who will get to use that prime time and who does not?
Madam Chair, that's a really good question. And certainly it's going to be a little bit easier for some classifications to participate in this great benefit versus others. And so directors who have a field staff where it's more efficient for them to travel to a job site with a couple of employees, more than 2 at a time. How does that work? So we've already started discussing some options to still make sure that they can have this opportunity available to them in a way that also works for the operations of that division. So I think we're working together to have creative solutions to let them know that they will be eligible. It might look a little bit different based on the needs of the city. But we want to make sure that we're doing everything we can to avail the opportunities for them as well.
Okay, thank you. And then that kind of, I think that still probably applies to, people that would be able to easily take this, and everybody wants 3 to 5 on Friday, for example, or 11 to 2 around the lunch hour. And that'll just be, will it be first come, first serve for those requests? Will it be, collaborative within the department of how everybody, figures this out? I imagine some people may not want to publicly discuss why they're taking this time. So I'm curious how those potential challenges or disagreements could be addressed within the departments.
Madam Chair, in the exhibit, we make it the responsibility of the supervisor, and it doesn't necessarily say it's by seniority or first come, first serve. But the first thing to consider is the needs of the city and the operations of the city. And so we can, if this gets approved, we can certainly carve out some time to do training and making sure that people are applying it in the most equitable way possible for supervisors, and kind of establish that by hearing from employees and supervisors.
Thank you. Yes, I think that's going to be one of the challenges that we'll need to balance out. And also if the needs of the department change. So if they become short-staffed and suddenly those 2 hours would impact the needs of the department, is there an established analysis, a process for looking at if either the time or just the general hours for a period of time is not going to be easily borne by the department?
I'd be concerned about taking it away. And I imagine that people would, work as hard as they could to maintain that, but I could see some scenarios where either temporarily or, depending on how long the situation may last, that somebody may not be able to access those hours or maybe have to move them around. And if there's disagreements between supervisors and staff around that, how will that be sorted through? How will that be addressed? How will that be mediated?
Madam Chair, I'll go ahead and read number 7. This might clarify some things. It says, while considering and reviewing requests for participation in the physical and mental fitness leave, supervisors should maintain adequate coverage to meet the business needs of the city, should not unfairly shift workloads to other staff members, and should not incur additional associated costs to the city. So I think, again, that does put some responsibilities on the supervisor. And if something changes, I think there's something in here that says if that the work schedule can be modified. If, say, for example, there's a water main break and someone's scheduled to go on their leave, they might not be able to go, and that's allowable. We don't have like a complaint process for this, being that it is a pilot program, but we can certainly talk through that as we roll it out and provide training to employees and supervisors on how to utilize it.
Okay, great. Thank you. Yeah, I think that'll be one of the most interesting things, I think, for us to watch and see how this does need to be finessed as it moves forward. Last question. I'm pretty certain this is true. As Councilor Lee Garcia mentioned, this is not, you cannot carry it over to the next calendar year. You also cannot carry it over into the next week, correct? So it's like 2 hours. If you do not utilize all of those 2 hours or any of those 2 hours, it does not roll over. Is that accurate?
That is correct.
Thank you so much. I do not have any other questions. Councilor Lee Garcia, another one. Go right ahead.
Thank you. All the discussion. Thank you, Madam Chair. These things are continuing to roll here. So 2 hours per week. So I'm going back to the 1 day of wellness per calendar year, but 2 hours per week. So if there's 52 weeks in a year, that's actually 104 hours of actual time if somebody was able to take their 2 hours every single week. So 104 hours translates into a little over a week. At an 80-hour work week, almost a week and a half work time. How does that work towards the 1 day of wellness versus the 2 hours per week? So now we're looking at not just 1 day, we're looking at close to the 5-day work week, 5, 7, close to 8 days of time in a sense. Is it where we looking at that? I mean, 2 hours is obviously 2 hours, but
Madam Chair.
because the 2 hours is for every single week.
Yes, Madam Chair, Councilor Lee Garcia, the intent is that you wouldn't, again, be able to accumulate those. So if you spread it out through the entire year, you're correct. It would be that number of hours, but it's to be used every week. So you wouldn't be able to bank all those hours and say, in December, I'm taking, I've accumulated all these hours and I'm taking them all off. It has to be during each week.
And I understand that. So if you didn't take your 2 hours this week, you take the 2 hours next week. I guess what I'm getting at is that if somebody were to take the actual 2 hours every single week of the calendar year, it would translate into 104 hours of actual time that they obviously were paid for. Their hours were paid for. They weren't at work because they were off taking their time, which was allotted to them. I still go back to we need people working. And again, this is my business perspective because, we don't provide our services without actual people working. And it's just one of the things that just came to my mind and trying to wrap my head around it. Because this is in addition to, could potentially be in addition to the time that people are already allotted And then again, obviously, I do understand that it's something that must be approved by their supervisors. And so I just wanted to make the committee aware that obviously this is potentially 104 hours of time that person would not be in their job to supply the services that they're supposed to be supplying. I don't know if anybody can answer to that.
Well, and I think that part of it, that's part of the reason why we wanted to do it as a pilot for multiple reasons, like Counselor Cassett's questions around the process. For it to be a permanent change in rules, personnel rules, we really want to know what the process and what language we need to add if it would become a permanent change. But we also want to see like the impact it has on productivity. Is it going to have a negative impact because people are not going to be at work? Or are we going to possibly fill positions and we're actually it's going to have a positive impact? So there's many data points that we're going to have to look at through the process. And that's why we really wanted it to be a pilot. I know we talked a lot about connecting with supervisors and getting their input, possibly surveying so that data could be easily shared with leadership on how that's impacting each department. But there's a lot of unknowns because we don't even know how it will be utilized. You know, if it would be utilized by all staff, what percentage? So it being a pilot was really necessary to gather that information to make a good decision whether or not this would fit the city as a permanent change or not.
Thank you for that response, Counselor Chavez. Okay. I'm done. Thank you. I'll yield the floor.
Thank you so much. Any other questions or comments at this time? And if not, can I have a motion?
Move to approve.
Second,
I have a motion and a second. Can I please have a roll call, Ms. Martin?
Counselor Lee Garcia,
Yes.
Counselor Villarreal,
Yes.
Counselor Michael Garcia,
Yes.
Counselor Chavez,
yes.
Chair Cassett,
Yes.
motion passes.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Bernadette. Salazar, sorry. All right, moving back to our presentations, DC Valdez, so wonderful to have you here. Thank you for joining us. We're getting an update on the Santa Fe Police Department's Axon Office Safety Plan 7, OSP 7, service contract for digital evidence management, body worn and in-car camera video systems, less lethal taser devices, and virtual reality empathy training equipment. We have Deputy Chief Valdez here to present. And I will turn it over to you as we get our technology set up.
Thank you. We'll have this going in just a second.
No problem. Thank you. We will wait until our committee members return. So take your time on the technology.
Oh, shit. Excellent. Thank you, guys.
All right, wonderful. We will wait just a moment. There's one. Yes, you should. We will wait just a moment for Counselor Garcia, if you don't mind.
No, not a problem.
I always feel a need to fill dead air. Everyone's like, you learn how to sit in silence. And this is why I don't meditate very well. It was worse on Zoom. I don't know. Well, maybe it's worse in person, but when we were on Zoom, it was always so awkward. When we would all pop on and just be sitting there, like staring at each other's faces. Oh, here he is. Wonderful. He's here. Great. All right. DC Valdez, take it away.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you to everyone for being able to sit here and have a look at our fabulous team that I have at Santa Fe Police Department. I had that photo up there for a reason. This is right after we rolled out this program and we had the body cams issued at Las Fiestas. So you'll see on their chest, they have that body worn camera. That is one of the items we're going to be covering with this presentation that I have for this evening. So the presentation covers our Officer Safety Plan 7+, and that's a contract that we brought before the council for consideration. It was approved in 2021. And we started rolling out the Axon body worn cameras that October of 2021. So it's been working out very well for us. And I know there were some of this body that were part of that process, and there were some folks that joined afterwards. So I'm going to go through a quick overview of the equipment that we do have, and then I'll take some questions at the end. So part of the OSP 7+ includes the body worn camera system, a Taser 7 less lethal conductive energy weapon, the in-car camera system. Software is Axon Evidence. We are also provided access to Axon Records. That is a different module that we're going to be rolling out and standing up. That's going to come at an additional cost that was not included. And so that is just going to be a scope of work that covers the build out and migration of our current records to this system. We also have the Axon virtual reality training, which comes with VR headsets and tablets that allows our staff to put in training situations. Axon community requests and Axon performance, which kind of monitors the health and the compliance for our systems that we have our officers utilizing. The first piece of equipment that we have is the Axon Body 3 camera. This is a state-of-the-art body-worn camera. It is really leaps and bounds from where we were before. It clearly captures video and audio during contacts with members of the community. And what's great about that is on our previous system and with other systems on the market, they only have 1 or 2 microphones. This one has several microphones to capture different frequencies, which is very helpful for us, especially if it's during windy situations in our town, or if there's a dynamic situation, if you have an officer that is trying to apprehend someone during flight. This integrates with our less lethal taser device and our in-car camera system. They're kind of like a group when they deploy out there. And I'll explain how that works in a second. The great benefit to this device is our officers can upload their video from their body-worn cameras from the field via their modem on their police unit. So that is a great benefit to us. And it reduces the downtime they have to come in the station, dock a camera to make more space on that device. So it works very well for us. This is the Taser 7 less lethal conductive energy weapon. This has some improved technology in comparison to the previous model. And it has other opportunities that we can utilize this thing where we would have limitations with the previous device. One big benefit of this device is it is portable, so it can be carried on the officer. And when we look at other less lethal devices that we have, those are often launchers that have to be carried, or it takes 2 hands for the officer to bring from the vehicle and then utilize it in the field. But this is helpful because if a situation goes from calm to chaos, this is a device they have that is accessible, that can be utilized on their array when they're considering what force options they have. This is our in-car camera system. Again, state-of-the-art system. This is one of the best devices out there. We looked at many of them. Integrates with our other systems as well. And again, this device, once the video is done recording and the officer And for these devices, these are also in vehicles for our public safeties and animal services officers. And they also carry the body worn cameras, but the TASER 7 is only limited to sworn police officers. So this device is fabulous because once the video is done, they stop the recording. It begins the upload up to the secured cloud for the video. So again, we don't have downtime with staff having to come into the station, plug in an Ethernet cable or downloading a CF card from the vehicle, which reduces time that they have to come into the station to maintain this equipment. So this is the back end of this device, and this is where a lot of the exciting stuff happens for us. This is Axon Evidence. This is the hub, our secured cloud, where we access a lot of these videos, not only from our staff, but also from members of the community. The big thing we've done a really poor job of, I know in our field and others, is we have things in different silos. We have some evidence in this silo, we have other evidence mediums in this silo, and they're just all over the place, and it makes it hard to manage and find them. So if you're an investigator, or if we're doing a request for the courts for discovery or for an IPRA request, you have to go looking in all those bins, and it kind of turns into a scavenger hunt. Makes it really tough to find things. With this, having all of our digital media in one silo makes it very easy for us to look at case files when we build cases. And it allows us to also help out with sending those case files to our either partner agencies, if we're working with other law enforcement agencies, to the district attorney's office, to the public defender's office, which are also on an Axon profile, which is called Axon Justice, which works with our evidence. And it allows them to get information they need in a timely manner. It also allows us to track and have an audit of when the evidence was sent over to that partner agency and when it was actually viewed or downloaded. So it builds in accountability, so there's not a question if they received the items they needed or not, or it lets them know when we uploaded it and when it was made available. This is very important for us when we discuss IPRA, because with IPRA, we have certain deadlines that we have and things that we need to provide to the public in a timely manner. Having Axon Evidence allows us to have also redaction software, which allows us to identify what needs to be protected, which is not able to be released for public viewing. Those things are outlined through the Attorney General's office and by state law, which tells us here's what you can release and here's what you cannot release. That is something that will be changing here with the new fiscal year once it's put into place. There's some changes to the IPRA laws, and we're in discussion with the city attorney's office to make sure we're in compliance with that. The other good thing for us is based on the videos that we have, the quality of the videos, the sizes of those videos are huge in comparison to what we would provide in the past. We would usually provide these videos on a CDR or DVD-R disc, which increased our cost. That wasn't really a cost that we would pass on to those requests. And in some cases, we'd have to do it, put those files on a thumb drive or an external hard drive, which could cost a couple $100. With this software suite, we're able to send a link to whoever the requester is, and they could download it at their leisure, and they have access to those videos if they make a request. And it also shows, hey, here's the video that you have. And there's that accountability that they did receive it. So if there's any concerns of, yeah, I didn't receive this video, it didn't come through, we can see if there's some type of technical issue with that. But so far, we've had a lot of success with that. The other item that is really helpful for, I know our business owners, many of them have their own surveillance equipment. Oftentimes, they're not the same. Everyone has their own preference. So that community request makes it very, very helpful for us, for business owners, because if we have to get surveillance video, oftentimes it's after hours. We're trying to get the video. A manager needs to get it. Sometimes they're on a DVD-R or they're on a thumb drive. We're able to now give those business owners and folks a link that they can get via their email or a text that lets them upload those items onto the Axon Citizen link. It's very helpful for us. We use it also for major crimes that occur. If there's multiple witnesses that maybe have information, it could be video from their cell phone or a photo from their cell phone. Once they put it into the Citizen community request link, then the chain of custody starts at that point. Our officers are able to review it. They're able to go and see if it's something that is meaningful to that case. And then it has that audit track showing that that officer reviewed those evidence items and if they decided to put evidence or not. That's a huge convenience for people that want to help us out, because the big inconvenience in the past was we had to find a time to make an appointment. They had to take off time from work. They had to bring by either the photos or a thumb drive, or they don't know how to download their system. So we'd have to send a detective out there to assist them. So This has been leaps and bounds. It's really something that's been very helpful for us. We've heard that's been really convenient for some of our businesses. Once in a while, we do have some challenges. Oftentimes it's on the business side of their technology. So in those cases, we're happy to still go by with a thumb drive. We get it. We put it into this evidence portal, and then we can wipe that thumb drive in. Again, the chain of custody starts at that point, and we have that tracking mechanism to see what's on that evidence. So this is something that's been really helpful for us, especially in our evidence room. This has been huge. We're able to track these evidence items by their case number, by the officer, or if there's a call number, if it doesn't require a case number, we can find out where that evidence is at. And it's very, very helpful for us. If we have something that has to be retained for a long period of time, we can also put those retention schedules in there. And all of our retention is set up to be in line with what the law requires, whether it's a misdemeanor, which unless it's prosecutor needs to be retained beyond the times it's needed for prosecution, that will go on a auto, retention schedule where we don't even retain it past a year. So at that point, it falls off, it creates more space. The big plus for us is we don't have a physical server on the premises that this stuff goes to. It's on a secured cloud that's offsite. And fortunately for us, and with your support, we're able to get the unlimited package. So we can just feed that thing forever, which is very helpful for us to have it. So if it is something we need to maintain for 5, 10, 20 years, we can do so and not worry about it. With those servers, they are getting updated constantly and they have redundancies in place. So if one server has an issue, it's replicated on other servers so we don't lose that evidence. So it's very helpful for us. It's been a great thing for us to use. Axon Performance is very helpful for our supervisors because this allows them to do random video reviews. It's something that's required by our policy. What they do is they have their officers assigned to them. They have to go into Axon Performance, and it allows them to say, cool, random reviews from this point to that point in time. And it randomly selects officers on their shift. It randomly selects the videos that they're going to view. And they look through those videos to ensure compliance with our policies, to make sure there's no issues of misconduct. And if they see small performance issues where, let's say, the officer did not, verbally acknowledge end body worn recording or end recording and then put the recording off, it allows them to, at the end of the review, it says, do you want to send them a message? And I've used this quite a bit with my staff, especially folks that are on field training, like our cadet staff, to remind them, hey, look, remember you do this on this body worn camera. Hey, remember to verbally say this when you end your recording. And it gives them that feedback via email. So we have a record on hand saying, hey, here's what we did to kind of remediate that issue. So if it does continue, we have that documentation and we're able to say, hey, look, we sent X amount of these reminders to you. Please make sure you do this in the future. It also lets us know how often they're docking their body worn cameras to make sure it's getting the latest updates. And also for their TASER devices to make sure those are also getting the latest updates. So they're supposed to do certain function checks of their devices. So those function checks are uploaded when they dock those devices. So if we see someone hasn't docked a device in some time, we can send them a message via email that says from the system saying, hey, you need to dock your body worn camera, has been docked in X amount of days. But it's very helpful for us, lets us know who's using them, who is not. And if we see that there's someone that is not activating their camera, we also get a flag for that as well, because there's certain parameters that we have built in where if someone's not activating their camera, we'll look at, well, what's their assignment? If they're on patrol, that may be an issue, and we can address it beforehand. Where before, with our previous system, we'd have to wait till they physically brought the camera in and docked it to see if there's any issues with it. So having that connected system has been very helpful for us to monitor the performance of our staff. The other great thing too is if there's been any errors with the equipment, if they have a fault, this will let us know, hey, this camera's giving us a message that there's a fault with a blur on the camera or it needs an update. It lets us know, and then we can immediately contact that officer or staff member to bring in the device, have it swapped out, and then they're back in the field. So we don't have any issues of failure with that device. Records is the next big step for us. What I think this is really great about this is it's current as new age, right? It's similar to what you have to do if you are, let's say, ordering something off of Amazon. It has those types of functionalities. What it also does is whatever the call classification is that you're documenting, it only gives you the fields that are necessary to fill out. So now you don't have to go through every box to see, does it apply, does it not apply? If you ever been to the doctor's office and you're setting yourself up as a new patient, you know my frustration, all right? That's what our officers do on most reports. They have to go box by box to see what applies and what does not apply. This thing will make it so it's a lot easier, so that reduces our time having to do reports. and it improves our accuracy as well. The great thing about records is once we have it, it will integrate with our other systems. So this stuff is constantly being updated, and it's really helpful for us, where if the officer's at a scene, it'll say, hey, you're on this scene. Do you want to use this as your locations for your scene? Yes. And then it'll fill in the address information, the GPS coordinates, and so on. So everything is really connected to it. It's very helpful. And there's even some intelligence on the back end, which can help you with the driver's license, where they're working on this right now, but you get the driver's license, put it in front of your camera, it'll scan it, and it'll kick it over to your records report. And that reduces errors that our officers would if they had to hand transpose it onto the report. So we're looking for ways to make our people more efficient, to build in that time so they can do other things like proactive patrols. This is in progress. We're getting through the contract portion of it, and we'll be bringing this before the committees and governing body for request for consideration approval. So this is something we're really excited about because our current record system is in need of replacement. So this is what we're looking at going to. The fabulous thing about it, it's already included in our OSP 7+, which is great. All we have to do is pay for the migration over. That was a huge win for us. The virtual reality training, this is going to be something that's going to really help our officers improve on their skill sets of active listening skills, crisis intervention techniques, communication. But what's really great too is this employs empathy training. Our training staff has been getting schooled up on this. They're going to be rolling it out to our staff. What's important for us is they've done the research. They've worked with people in the mental health field to, replicate and say, hey, look, we're going to have you kind of experience from a virtual reality perspective what someone is dealing with when they're going through crisis. If they're paranoid schizophrenic, you put on the headset and you pretty much get to sense and feel what someone goes through when they're experiencing those situations. And then it turns in and you are now the responding officer and you try to go through that situation. And it's going to improve better outcomes in those situations to help build a little bit of empathy in those situations. We do a great deal of training with our partners down at PSPG through our crisis intervention training. We do that training about every 2 years. There's a lot of role playing, active listening skills, putting people in those situations. This allows us to immerse our staff in this environment without having to send them to the training site, where they can come in for an hour or two. We put them through this training and we can get them refreshed. And with the frequency of being able to roll this out, it's very helpful. If people see that they would benefit from additional training from it, they're going to be welcome to come into our training section and work with them to say, hey, look, can I get another scenario and get this done? We're going to be rolling out training department-wide for all of our staff. This will be integrated into our crisis intervention and de-escalation training, what we're doing now in the fall. So it's not going to replace it. It's going to be a supplement to it. So going above and beyond what we want to do. We're also, again, with this and much of the technology that Axon provides to us, the biggest benefit that we have through the contract is they have automatic refreshes of equipment included. So with us at year 2.5 of this contract, our body worn cameras will be replaced. So the ones that have been in the field, they'll be replaced with either the current model, or if the new model is available, they'll upgrade us to that new model so they have the current technology. With our previous system, we were just buying them, and once they met end of life, we had to purchase them again to replace them. So this is helpful for us. It's more like a subscription service for this equipment. If there's any issues with the equipment, they're under warranty. We have had situations where, hey, we've had a camera fail. You issue the officer a spare, the other one gets sent back, and then they send one in the mail as soon as they see that we had the shipping label printed. So it's helpful for us to do that, and that is something that's available for us for all the equipment provided by Axon, which is a huge plus for us. We also get a refresh of our in-car camera system at year 5, which is very helpful for us. So all in all, we're really pleased with what we're seeing from our equipment that we got from Axon. What I really like and enjoy is they are always looking at how can we improve on what we have and what can we do to advance the technology. There's a lot of things that we're very excited about. Today, they showed a demonstration of their new body-worn camera. And I see that it has a lot of good use for us. One of the things that's a benefit is if you have a Ring camera or those other devices, you know that you can get your phone out, push a button, and then you can talk to someone over your camera. With the new Axon Body 4 camera, that's going to be a possibility for our supervisors in the field, where right now they can see something. If it's a live streaming, they can coordinate a response with their staff and then relay it over the radio. Now, if it's something that we integrate with our staff, that supervisor can get an alert when that camera is live streaming, but there's also an added benefit on the camera where the officer can hit a button on the camera, to alert their supervisor like, hey, I'm dealing with this. You may want to tune in and help me out. Now they can communicate over their cell phone, which then transmits to the body cam and says, hey, look, here's what we're doing. Or if they have to go and coach them, during a stressful situation, hey, man, you have to do CPR. Let's do this. I'll count the compressions for you. You do the breaths and let's do this. That communication for me is huge. That benefit for us would be a great benefit because it doesn't tie up that precious airtime when people can be coordinating other things. The added plus for that as well is it's going to be capturing that body cam. So when we need it for court or documentation, it's going to be a recorded event and it's going to be documented. So that's very helpful for us with those live streams. We had a critical incident that unfolded where we were able to go and allocate resources to kind of get containment set up, slow things down, and then bring in some other folks to help out to resolve it in the best situation possible. So based on what we've seen with this technology and the training that our staff have received on it and their field deployments, it's been very helpful for us. We're very pleased with this. With that, I'll stand for any questions.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, DC Valdez. I really appreciate the detail and just the information about how this really impacts your work in the field. Any questions, comments from members of the committee? Counselor Lee Garcia.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, DC Valdez, for the presentation. I study a lot of how information technology and technology management works and how it filters into progress and quality of the work that you put out. In this case, it sounds like it's very, very integral to the work that you do on a daily basis. And I can attest to the upload link for information. Even, I've been in business for many years, and in order to provide surveillance video it used to be very difficult. Do you have a CD? Can you burn it to the CD? How can you send it? You can't send it via email. So that upload link, I've used it the last few times we've been the victims of crime, and it's simple and easy. And so I think that is a great piece. In regards to the information once received, does this system cross over to other agencies or accessible to other agencies such as the sheriffs or the state police? Is it something that would be an asset to us in that regards, or to the community in that regards?
Madam Chair, Councilor Lee Garcia, if they're a partner agency and they utilize Axon equipment, then a lot of the stuff we can share with them. If we can't share the information via a partner to partner share, we can send them a link. They can then download videos from us and we can track it. With the system, I know every agency has their preference. Anyone that I have had the opportunity to speak to about this this product that we've received from Axon, I let them know like it's fabulous. I know a lot of smaller agencies utilize the camera, but they utilize them in an offline mode. And I always encourage them, get the software that comes with it. It really is a great benefit to you. But for us, I know the Albuquerque Police Department utilizes Axon, as does Rio Rancho Police Department, and a couple of the sheriff's offices. So when we've had cases that have crossed over, sharing the evidence with them, if it's a case that involves both parties, is very, very helpful.
Madam Chair, Councilor Garcia, if I may ask DC Valdez to also speak to the district attorney's office and their use of the product.
Thank you, Director Ochoa. So the Office of the Public Defender, they just went live with their justice program, which is the software that is for prosecutors and defense attorneys. And for those folks, it makes it easier for them to help manage the cases. So in years past, most of our cases were, again, printed paper copies that had to be put together, and you had to replicate 3 binders to exactly match each other. With that justice portfolio they're receiving, they should have going live now at the new fiscal year. The case files are going to be in a digital format. So when they're organized on our end, when we send it to them, it's also going to be organized in the same manner. And it's not, again, a scavenger hunt for them to try to track down what video belongs to which officer and what documents belong to which officer. They have everything that we can see on our end. And with that data share, it really speeds up the process. Even for us to have to drive those thumb drives or hard copies down to the DA's office, it saves that time and effort. But especially if we have something that is time sensitive that we need to get to them within 3 days, by having the remote uplinks with our body cams and in-car cameras and being able to send our reports and put them in a digital medium on our Axon evidence, it allows us to speed up the process and streamline it to get it over to the people that need it.
Thank you. In regards to the security for these servers that they're being uploaded to, obviously that's something that is very important so people don't hack into the systems of sort. And who manages that?
Madam Chair, Councilor Lee Garcia. So we contract with Axon and they provide that server space to us. They maintain the health of that server. So it's nothing that we maintain on site. What they do is they store our data, and for them, they have to keep it secure due to the sensitive nature of that data. We've had no issues with any data breaches. To my knowledge, they have not experienced any data breaches as well. And Axon is not a camera or a taser company. They're a technology company. They do software and that kind of thing. So they're very, they have a lot of utility in that area, and they're very knowledgeable in that space.
Last question I have in regards to the additional hardware that you'll be using. You already have quite a bit of hardware on your persons as you are daily. How much additional is the camera or the tasers and other things that we looked at that you presented?
Madam Chair, Councilor Lee Garcia, it's not very cumbersome. The camera is very light. It usually goes on the front of the vest. It doesn't really wear down the officer, that kind of thing. It's not really heavy. Same thing goes for the taser device as well. They're a lot more convenient than other things that we would have to use. I know with our previous camera system, it was a tethered camera head, which was problematic. They often would get dislodged and you would not be able to capture the situation. We've had a lot of success with these cameras, and it isn't enough to affect the performance of the officer. What officers wear these days compared to decades in the past, they have to carry a lot of equipment on them. And that is something we're conscious of and something that we explored. And even to the extent that we have researched and have deployed an outer vest carrier, which is where the body armor goes, and something that has a neat appearance, but allows them to move items off of their waist if they choose to, and move it to their vest. So now they're carrying it on their shoulders, and that's where the weight is at. And that's come out. A lot of folks have been doing this for a while, because if you carry stuff on your belt for a long time, it can actually cause issues with your hips and back and that kind of stuff, especially getting in and out of the vehicle. So by employing those outer vest carriers, not only for this equipment, but other equipment that they do carry, we've said, hey, look, you can reposition it somewhere else so it can spread that load. But we're very strict, and we say you can't overload them with other things. Just whatever you carry on your waist, we want that on the vest. We don't need you to carry the kitchen sink and everything else. So I want them to be mindful of that.
And just last recommendation, you mentioned piecemealing a program. I don't think we've found that really works well. So I would suggest to get what we need to make it worthwhile. Absolutely. No further questions, Madam Chair.
Thank you so much, Counselor. Councilman Villarreal.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, DC Valdez, for the presentation. I was eagerly awaiting this presentation just to see how things are going with Axon. And that was a big contract, and there were a lot of different components, and it's good to hear how things are working together and that it's adding to efficiencies for the department. I was just curious about some of the components. And I guess I'll start with the taser. And we got to test that when they had I don't know who was there out of this group. I think I was the only one that we got to test. I don't think we got to shoot the taser. I can't remember. Did we as counselors? It was pretty powerful. So I'm just curious, like as an alternative that, for certain situations, have you all calculated how often you've had to use the devices since we've implemented them?
Madam Chair, Councilwoman Villarreal, I can get you numbers and I can do that in a follow-up. But I know one thing that we always emphasize with our staff is being able to communicate. That's the number one thing. We want folks, especially when they come in to apply to be a police officer, we ask them, hey, what's the most important skill set or tool that you have? Some people say, oh, well, you need your badge so they know that you're the police and this and that. And some folks, they get an A+ when they say you have to have a good head and shoulders to be able to communicate. And those are folks that we look to. And if someone says, hey, we need a badge or a gun, I'm like, the most important equipment you have, remember, is your mind and your ability to communicate, because that can help with de-escalating situations. It can let people know that you're hearing them and that you are concerned for them. And in most cases, that can help avoid situations that would escalate. With these devices, again, it just gives us other options. Again, with the taser, the other alternatives, if we were to use less lethal, would be, you know, a beanbag shotgun, a 40 mil impact sponge round, an expandable baton, or OC. So when we look at what we have, we're trying to, again, minimize potential for injury for the individual based on the totality of the circumstances. And so for us, if we could resolve something by being able to communicate and giving that person an extra 10 or 20 minutes to just let us know how they feel, get through that crisis and come down a bit, it helps us out not only then, but in the future. Because if we have to utilize force to subdue someone and take them into custody, that may not be the last time that we have that encounter. And we want people to know, like, every time that we have to have an encounter, we wanted it to be, again, peaceful for everybody. We want the best outcome. At the end of the day, we have to do our job, but if we get people to participate in that process and say, look, we understand you may have to go and be incarcerated because of this. The best way to go is just let's make it cool. If it means that we have someone bring you a cigarette because that's going to bring you down. If I have to buy you a cheeseburger on the way to jail, not a big deal. Those are small things we do to, again, build that trust and have better outcomes. In some situations, some folks, they're not game to do any of that stuff, even to the point where they will attack our officers. So at that point, we have to do what's necessary to resolve the situation and minimize both the threat to the individual, the officers, and the community at that point.
That makes sense. Yeah, if you could get me that data, I'm just curious about the use of the taser. And then we've noted, or we heard actually during, I guess it was during budget hearings, about the IPRA requests have gone up considerably. And I'm just curious about, is that due to new technology because we have body cam and car cams and people know that it's accessible, or why do you all think that that's gone up considerably, the number of IPRA requests?
I know anecdotally, just in speaking with the city attorney's office, the number of IPRA requests that the city of Santa Fe receives, it's about half of what the city of Albuquerque receives. And if you look at the size of our city compared to Albuquerque, those are some pretty big numbers. I know one thing with our implementation of Next Request, that really made the ability to make a NIPA request very easy. And I know that increased the workload for our city attorney's office. But with just the accessibility of digital video, and again, with these videos, it takes a long time for our folks in the city attorney's office to go through that information, decide what meets the requirement for public release, what maybe not need to be protected. It takes a lot of time. For just one scene with one officer, you're guaranteed to have about 3 video perspectives. So if they're on scene for an hour, that's 3 hours of video they have to go through. And it's really, time consuming for them to go through it. In most cases, we don't send just one officer to a scene. It's going to be anywhere from 2. And then if it's a critical situation, it could be up to 10. So that just multiplies on the way out. And that's just the body worn camera side. If there's reports, that number grows. But it's a lot of workload to go and have that. And, I can't speak for the city attorney's office, but just based on my assessment of what I see, I know we all work very hard to make sure those documents are ready to be turned over for inspection. They have to go through the review process, and that review process is a very time consuming process. And I'd venture to say that the city attorney's office, frankly, they don't have the staff to turn it around as quickly as they would like to turn around. But I know they do their best to communicate with folks like, hey, there's going to be a delay because of this. If it's an incident that involved 10 officers, that's 10 police reports. We're looking at 30 perspectives. If there's just one recording, if there's multiple recordings where they do a transport or they do a follow-on interview, it just multiplies from that point. So again, just the accessibility information, it's at our fingertips, but trying to filter and look at that information to see what can we release right now in its pure form versus what needs to be protected and what's permitted to be released by the IPRA handbook and state.
Yeah, I realize it takes time to go through the videos, and that's a lot of our staff time. I guess I'm just curious about the numbers of requests going up, and we haven't really been told, well, is it because it's accessible now and people realize that we have more data that can be utilized for whatever investigation? I guess I'm just curious. I don't know if staff has thought about that. Like, hey, what's going on in the community that people, I mean, I don't think it's maybe I'm wrong, a rise in crime and everybody's out to look and get IPRA requests, but I guess it'd be good to tell like the public, like why do we have more IPRA requests for video and
I think people are curious too, like if there's an incident that occurs, if it occurs down their street, again, they can make a request for the report. They can make requests for the video. I know with,
so it's not really victims necessarily asking for the info, it's just
the
interested parties?
interested parties. The other thing too is if there's a vehicle crash or an insurance claim, the insurance companies may put that request in. If there's two parties in that insurance claim, then both parties will request that. And I know I work a lot with the media on their requests that they send over to us. And in most cases, they'll go straight to the request first. And they'll look to see what information that, hey, we heard this happen in Santa Fe from the hot sheets that are online. I want to request any and all documents related to this incident. And those things are a little bit easier because when it's something, we could provide that request to multiple folks because they have the same request. So that's helpful and we could track it. But I just think people are inquisitive on what's going on. Some people too with the insurance companies, they're trying to limit risk. So those are a lot of requests that I know we receive on the police department side. Even for fender benders or minor crashes, they need to know what the cost is going to be for that claim and what their liability is.
Right. Okay. Thank you. Any feedback? No. Okay. Let's see. I'm curious about the community request. I think it's great to have digital evidence, easy for community members to upload. From what I've heard from folks in the community is that they've been told by certain officers that their video, whether it's the cameras on their homes or videos that they've taken on their own personal cell phones, that could not be used to build a case for evidence and that it isn't used by our officers. So I'm curious about that. I didn't quite understand when they tell me that. I always thought that if there is clear video footage that you all could use, that you can use it for certain situations. So maybe you could explain that if that's just inaccurate or if there's certain things you can't use.
Now I'm curious. So to answer your question, if there's video surveillance that's provided, and as long as it's something that we can look at and it's helpful to the case, it is going to be very helpful. Even if it shows the time and if we can't make out the individual's face or that kind of stuff, there's other things that can link it to. But if you'd like to, you can send me an email or give me a call offline, and I'll be happy to help out with getting that all straightened out. If they have video that they submitted that they felt that it was able to be utilized as evidence, I'll be happy to look into that and get it addressed.
Yeah, I haven't thought of it. There hasn't been anything most recently, but I remember that there was, issues happening on, say, Guadalupe Street, and there were businesses that did have camera footage. And there was a conversation like, well, how can we help with the situation? And if we send you our video footage, is that going to help kind of figure out what's happening? And there were some cops that said that it wouldn't help them. And if they didn't witness it themselves, that it wouldn't help the situation to catch the person that was breaking in, for example. So if it ever comes up again, I'll direct them to you. It just was confusing to me because I was like, well, I think they use it. I think they're able to use it. And
Especially if it's a break-in, that's a felony, so we can absolutely utilize it. If it's something that has to be witnessed by an officer to make an arrest, that would be true. But even if they have the video, if they don't witness it firsthand, they can likely file charges and have them brought before the court to answer.
Okay. That's
So,
good to know. I think
it'd be-
some of us have heard that if you all didn't see it and weren't physically there to witness the situation, that no other witness, whether it was video or other, would be valid. So it's good to know that, and we'll move on and make sure that people know who they need to contact if they don't think that that's valid. So thank you for that. I think the other question I had was about, I was really interested in the virtual reality trainings. We got to test those. And at the time, I thought you all said that was going to be mandatory and that officers would need to be trained and would have to have certain number of hours that they would be part of the virtual reality trainings. So it sounds like it hasn't been utilized that way, or it was voluntary, because you said that it would be it would be implemented department-wide by this fall. So can you say more about how it's been used, or if it's just been optional?
Madam Chair, Councilwoman Villarreal, so it's not optional. So any training is mandatory by the department. The reason why we haven't been able to implement the training at this point is because of supply chain, we had issues with chip shortages. The chip shortages affected the VR device and also our in-car camera system. So those were delayed in getting to us. We had the body worn cameras were able to come in fairly quick. I think within about 2 months. We had them in October. The in-car cameras came in this last November. We did installs on them, had it all done by the end of the year, by the new year. And then we got the virtual reality headset in January. At that point, we started doing the training on them, seeing how we can implement it to our training program. And then we have to put on our calendar to say, hey, here's what we're doing, mental impairments training and de-escalation. So it's going to be integrated into that training. It's not going to take the place of those two trainings. It's going to be supplemental. So in addition to, it's not going to be voluntary. Any training that we have is mandatory for our staff, but this device will give the opportunity if folks want to have some extra time with the device. They can always come in and say, hey, I know I did this training, but I want some more time on the device to hone my skills. So at that point, that would be an optional, but department-wide will have mandatory training utilizing those devices.
Good to know. And when we first started this contract, which was that 2018?
At 2021.
21, it started, but we had this initial kind of access and just exposure to it, but I thought we actually started the contract way earlier.
No, Councilwoman. So we, with our old camera system, we were wanting to replace our system around 2018. That's when we were like, hey, the one we have right now is not working for us.
Right.
And we're looking for an alternative. We didn't have a contract with Axon at that point, but we're looking at, who was providing body worn cameras, which ones would benefit our department and our community. And that's what we said. We want to do an evaluation with Axon. So around 2018-19 is when we got a handful of devices and we did a test evaluation with them. Based on that test evaluation, that really guided us to our decision to go with Axon.
Oh, that's so strange. But I remember when they came to have those test vans, and what year was that?
2021.
It was during COVID?
Yes, ma'am.
Wow, it's
Madam
so
Chair.
weird because I remember, I felt like we had these plans and we met with Axon way before COVID.
Madam Chair, Councilwoman Villarreal, I remember distinctly that it was 21. That was the year I started in this position, and this was one of the first things we started talking about with the department. It was a real learning curve for me, and their commitment to public accountability, officer safety, and just having great evidence to get to the DA and other partners was striking. So it was during COVID, and it was a strange time. That may be why not everybody came to the van to shoot the taser. I did shoot the taser as well, and I remember you being there. So
I was watching. I don't think I actually shot the taser.
Yeah,
but-
it was 21,
Okay.
and it's amazing to me that it's actually been 2 years. So
Wow, I'm lost in COVID times, I guess. I feel like it was so long ago, but okay, 2021. So we have 5 years with them. So this contract will be considered, there may be a consideration for renewal so that's 2021, 2026.
Yes, ma'am.
Wow, that's great. Okay. Good to know. Well, I'm happy to see it's moving forward and things are working well. And that the virtual reality training is going to be happening. As I thought that was really an interesting tool. And I hope that that you all will see it beneficial for the officers as well. That's all. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Councilwoman. Any other questions or comments from members of the committee at this time? Okay, thank you again so much, DC Valdez. I really appreciate you coming and providing these updates. So really sounds like it's been a beneficial program. So looking forward to hear as the new developments come through and how that continues to assist.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And again, I appreciate everyone's support in getting this thing off the ground. We couldn't have done it without you. And again, our officers are really, really pleased with the devices. So thank you again.
Thank you. All right, moving on. We are now at matters from staff. Are there any matters from staff this evening?
No matters, Madam Chair.
Director Brown, any matters?
Madam Chair, no matters from the staff.
Wonderful. And how about matters from the committee? None. Matters from the chair, I have none. Our next meeting will be Wednesday, May 17th at 5 p.m. and at 6:29 we are adjourned. Thank you.